What's up everyone, I'm Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, where we cover all things Swift and SwiftUI related. And in this video, we're going to create a little statistics section that's going to go on the top of our home view. You may have noticed when I was showing you the final version of the app that at the top of the view, there are some market data statistics that we don't yet have in our version of the app. And that includes the global cryptocurrency market capitalization, the 24-hour trading volume, Bitcoin dominance, and then also a value for the current value of the current user's portfolio. So although we don't have any of that data to actually put on the screen yet, in this video we're going to set it up. So we're going to create the view that will then hold all of this data once we do get it.
All right, welcome back everyone. I am back in our Xcode project, of course. I should probably stop saying that because we are always in the Xcode project. I have a final version of the app here. This is not the current version you guys have. This is a final version of the app. And in the final version, we have this section up here with some statistics for the entire, for the market. So it's not related to a single coin. This is the entire market's market cap and volume. And if I click this arrow here, it actually animates and it shows us our portfolio value on the right as well. So in this video, we're going to set up this section. We're not going to actually get this data just yet, but we're going to set this up and put in some fake data just so that we can get it all ready for when we do have this data. So the first thing we're going to do is set up a model for this so that we can reuse a model. So just like we made a coin model, and then each of these rows has a coin model, even though they're different coins, they all use the same coin model code that we made. So it's this coin model. Each of these little sections are also going to have a model behind them. So I'm going to right click our models folder. I'm going to create a new file, and it's going to be a Swift file, and I'm going to call this statistic model. Go ahead and click create. And in here, let's create a struct. Let's call it statistic model, open the brackets. And again, in a production app, I'd probably just call this statistic. I wouldn't actually include the word model, but I'm doing this just to be explicit in this tutorial. So the first thing this model is going to need is, let's call this a title, this top gray section here on the right. So let's say let title, that will be of type string. Second, we're going to need a main value here, so let's just call it value. We'll say let value of type string. And then third, we're going to have a percentage on the change, and we can see that the percentage is going to be optional because we're not going to have a percentage for all of them, but some of them will. So we'll say let percentage change, and that will be of type double, and we'll make it optional. We're going to use this in a for each loop in our code. And to use a model in a for each loop, we either need to conform to identifiable or hashable. And we're just going to use identifiable because I find that it is just a little bit easier to use and understand. So we're going to conform to identifiable. And in order to do that, we need to give each statistic model an ID. So here we'll say let ID, and we're just going to set it equal to UUID, open close parentheses, dot UUID string. And this is just going to be a random ID. So every time we call this, it creates a random ID, and that's going to be the ID for this model. In practice, for what we're doing, it actually does not matter what the ID is, but the system needs to know that the SwiftUI view can determine which model is which model based on the ID. So because we're giving an ID, we can then use it in our for each loops. And lastly, let's customize the init, because right now, if I create a new model, so if I say let new model, and if I set it equal to a statistic model, I have this one completion here that asks for the title, value, and percentage change, right? So I could give it a title, I could give it a value, and then we could give it a percentage change of 1, or because this is optional, we could include it as nil. But writing out this percentage change as nil is time consuming and it's not really needed. So instead of doing this, we can create a custom init here. So in here, we'll create a custom init, open close parentheses, open the brackets. And let's add in our 3 values. So we'll do title of type string. We'll do value of type string. And we'll do percentage change of type double, and we'll make it optional. So in the init, we'll set self.title equal to title, self.value equal to value, and self.percentage change equal percentage change. So the init right now, as it is the exact same as we have here, and that's great. But what we can do is give this percentage change a default value so that if we don't include it in our init, we can default it to a specific value, which will be nil. So here, I'm going to set this equal to nil. All right, so now I can also create, I could say let new model, and let's call it new model 2, and we'll set it equal to statistic model. And when I open the parentheses, there is now 2 completions. And the first completion here actually doesn't include the percentage change at all. So if I click that and I add our title and I add our value, these 2 models are exactly the same right now, except in this second version, we didn't need to include this percentage change because it went to nil by default. And of course, we can always add a value in here if we want to, but if we don't include a value, like in this row here, it's just going to be nil, which is awesome. And that's exactly what we want. And now that we have our model, let's create this view up here. So what we're going to actually do is create a component just for this little view here. And this way we can reuse that component a bunch of times. So because it's a reusable component, let's put it in our components section here. I'm going to right click on the components file. Let's actually fold up some of these folders. Let's fold up the services, the extensions, the utilities. Let's fold up the view models here. And in our components folder, let's right click, create a new file. It's going to be a SwiftUI view. And let's call this statistic view. Click create. Click resume just to make sure we are all connected. All right, I'm going to hide the simulator. Let's go full screen here. And let's recreate that view. Of course, we're going to start by passing in a statistic. So we'll say let stat of type statistic model. So when we go to do this, we're going to get this error warning down here that we are missing the stat in the call. And we then want to put a statistic model into our previews. And because we might use this a bunch of times, let's actually put the statistic model that we want to use in our preview provider extension, just like we did with the other previews. So I'm going to go to the extensions, preview provider, and in this folder and in this file we have our developer preview where we set up a coin for our previews. We set up a home view model. So let's say let stat1, and we'll set it equal to a statistic model with a title, value, and percentage. The title, let's just say maybe market cap. The value, let's give it a string with a money sign, maybe 12.5 billion. These are just random numbers. And then the percentage change, let's give it a 25.34. Let's also create another one so we can do let stat2. This should actually be stat, sorry. Equals statistic model. And let's use the other completion without the percentage change this time. This one, let's just say total volume. And let's give this a value, and let's give this a string with a maybe money sign of 1.23 trillion. Again, just a random number. So now we can use this stat1 and stat2 in our previews. So I'm going to jump back into our statistic view that we are building out here. I'm going to press Command-Shift-K to clean and rebuild. Again, that's the product clean build folder. And in our statistic view preview here, let's call dev.stat1. All right, just to make sure it's coming through, let's change the text to the stat dot maybe title. Market cap, awesome. All right, let's set up this view quickly. Let's add a VStack. Let's give it an alignment of leading so that everything is aligned to the left, and spacing of maybe 4. Open the brackets. Let's add a text here with the stat.title. Let's add another text with the stat.value. And one more text with the stat.percent changed. And we'll convert this into a percent, so we'll call as percent string. And this is optional, so there's a chance that we don't get it. So let's give it a default value with 2 question marks, and we'll just do a blank string if we don't have one. But we do have one in this, and now we can see our double has converted to a percent, 25.34%, which is looking pretty good. Let's add some formatting on this. On the first text, let's add a .font of caption. Let's give it a foreground color of color.theme.secondary text. So it's our gray. Our main value, let's give it a font of headline and a foreground color of color.theme.accent. Looks a little bit better. And this percentage change, let's give it a font of caption, and let's also maybe make it .bold, so it's a little bit thicker. I think that looks good. And I want to add a little arrow next to this percentage, so if it is positive, it's pointing upward, and if it's negative, it's pointing downward. So I'm going to hold the command button, click on this text, embed it into an H stack, and on the left side of the H stack, I'm going to add an image with a system name, and here let's use triangle.fill. So we have our triangle. Let's make it a little bit smaller by calling font.caption. And it still looks a little big, so it still looks like it's a little bit bigger than the text. So let's actually use caption 2 on this. So it's a tiny bit smaller, which looks a little bit better. All right, and this triangle, I want it to only be pointing upward if this percentage is positive. If this percentage is negative, I want it to be pointing downward. So let's here call .rotation effect. Let's give it an angle, and we'll use the degrees completion, and we're going to check if the percentage change here is positive or negative. So in here, let's add stat.percentage change, otherwise 0. So this is our percentage change. We'll put it in parentheses. And if it is greater than or equal to 0, question mark, we'll then rotate this 0 degrees. Otherwise, we'll rotate it 180 degrees. All right, this looks a little bit ugly here. Let me put the angle on a second line. Let's delete this. All right, so our percentage change, if the percentage change is greater than 0, just leave it pointing upright. But if it is less than 0, rotate it 180 degrees, which will actually be the opposite and pointing downward. So let's also change the color of this bottom row here. So on this H stack, I'm going to change the foreground color, and I'm going to check the same thing. So I'm going to copy this code here. Let's just copy the whole thing. And if it is greater than or equal to 0, let's change the color to color.theme.green. So if it's greater than 0, we're going to have green text. Otherwise, if it's less than 0, we'll do color.theme.red. So this should be green because it is positive right now. There's a little bit of too much spacing here, so let's change the H stack with a spacing of 4. Better. And finally, this whole H stack, I want to hide it if there is no percentage here, because sometimes that percentage is optional. So on here, let's call .opacity, and we'll say stat.percentage change is equal to nil. So if it is nil, let's make the opacity 0.0, otherwise 1.0. And the reason I'm using the opacity here instead of doing an if-let, because a lot of times in our code we use like an if-let stat equals, and then we'll only show it if it equals. But because this is going to be in a row with a bunch of other items, I want to make sure that all of the items, even the ones without the percentage, have all 3 rows, so this way they can all be aligned up together. So by changing just the opacity, this is still going to be drawn on the screen, it's just that we won't be able to see it. And this way the frame will stay the same whether or not we are showing this with opacity or not. And I just want to quickly check that this looks good with a negative value as well as no percentage here. So let's actually jump back into the preview provider and let's add one more. We'll say let stat3 equals statistic model. Open the parentheses. Let's use the one with the percentage change. This will say portfolio value. Let's give the value a string with a money sign of maybe 50.4K. And then percentage, let's make this negative this time. So we'll do negative 12.34. All right, so I'm going to go back into our code. On the statistic view, let's go down to the preview quickly and let's just add a group. Open the brackets. I'm going to paste 3 statistic views in here. Let's actually make each of them .preview layout of size that fits. So we have 3 previews here. And let's just change it to stat2 and stat3. I'm going to Command-Shift-K to clean and rebuild, and hopefully we can see all 3 variations now. And they should look pretty good now. Alright, so the first one we have a positive percentage, so it's green, the arrow is pointing upward. The second one we don't have a percentage, but we can see that the frame is still the same height, which is exactly what we wanted. And the third one we have a negative percentage, so the arrow is flipped downward and it's the red text. Let's also just make sure these look good in the dark mode, so let's call .preferred color scheme and change it to dark. Let's do it on the first and the third one and just make sure that looks good in dark mode as well, which I think it does. Alright, now that we have our statistic view set up, let's create that row that we're going to actually put onto the screen. So we're going to create a separate view just for that row or that section. So it's going to be on the home screen, so let's go to the home folder and it's going to be a view, so let's go to the views folder in there and let's right click it, create a new file. It's going to be a SwiftUI view and let's call this home stats view. The home statistics view. Click create, and I'm going to put it right in between these two. So we have the home view, the home stats view, and then the coin row view. Let's click resume on the canvas to make sure we're all connected. Alright, and let's create some fake data that we're going to build out while we're putting onto this screen. So up here, let's say let statistics of type array of statistic model, and let's just set it equal to, and let's give it 4 blank statistics for now. So we'll do statistic model, open the parentheses, let's use the % change completion. Let's just say, let's write out title, let's write out value. We're going to change this in a second. Percentage change, we'll just do maybe 1. I'm going to add a comma after this, and I'm going to copy and paste it 4 times. And the second one, let's just do no percentage change. The third one, let's do no percentage change. And the fourth one, let's make it negative, maybe -7. I don't know. Let's click resume, make sure this still builds. Let's start by adding a hstack to our screen here. And let's loop on this array of statistic model. So we'll do for each, open the parentheses, and we're going to do the first completion, we're going to do for each statistics. Press enter on the content. This will be for each stat in. And for each statistic, we're going to, of course, show a statistic view. Open the parentheses, and we're going to pass in the stat that we're looping on. Click create. All right, so we have our data coming through. We have our 4 items. All right, and if I pull up the finished product, you'll probably notice that although there are 4, there's only 3 on the screen right now. And when I click the arrow, the 4th one animates onto the screen on the right side here. So each of these are going to be 1/3. Each of these are actually the size of 1/3 of the screen, and then the 4th one is pushed off to the right. So we need to set up this sizing as well as this animation now. So let's start by setting the frame on each of these, and let's set the dot frame with a width, and let's make it a width of exactly 1/3 of the screen. So we'll do UI screen dot main dot bounds dot width divided by 3. And again, I'm using this UI screen dot width because our app is going to be in portrait mode only. If I was making an app for portrait and landscape, this call this call would not adjust when we go to landscape. So in that case, I would have to use a geometry reader. But because we are portrait only, we are okay with using this width. All right, and now it looks a little weird because the frame is actually extended past the edges of the screen. And although the 4 items are larger than the screen, we want this frame to just be limited to the screen itself. So on the entire H stack, I'm going to add a frame. And let's make the width of the entire frame of the H stack equal to UI screen.main.bounds.width. So now we can see that the frame just stops right here. And now we just need to shift the statistics from the left side of the frame to the right side of the frame. So right now this frame has an alignment of center. And that's why we're looking at it in the center. I'm going to put this on a separate line here. But what we can actually do is change the alignment of this frame to leading. And that would put the first one all the way on the left side of the frame here. And if I change this to trailing, it will put the right one on the screen. So all we need to do is animate this alignment and we'll get that really cool effect where it's going left to right. So at the top here, let's create an @binding var. Let's call it show portfolio. And it'll be of type bool. So that show portfolio is going to be when we click on that top right button to go to the right or the left in our app. And all we need to do here is animate this alignment. So we'll say show portfolio. If it is show portfolio, let's do trailing. Otherwise, let's do leading. All right, and let's fix the preview at the bottom here. So let's just call .fix. Let's just give it a constant value of maybe false. So we start on the left side. Let's resume the canvas, make sure we're all connected. All right, and the last thing I want to do in this video is take the statistics and actually put it into our view model. So I'm going to copy what we have here, this let statistics, and copy this. I'm going to jump into our home view model, right? Because this is going to be on the home view. So we're going to have access to the home view model. And I'm going to go up to the top here, and I'm going to put it actually above our altcoins. Let's create an @published var. And I'm just going to paste what we had, our statistics, get rid of this let. And this is just going to be a published variable with our array of statistics here. So let's go now back into our view, our home stats view. Instead of having the statistics right here, let's pull the environment object. So we'll do @environment object. We'll do private var and we'll call it VM, and it'll be of type home view model. And to get this to work on the preview, we need to make sure that we're adding the environment object to our preview instance here. So at the bottom, let's just call it environment object. And we can access the one that we set up for our preview provider by calling dev.homevm. Now all we need to do is change our code. So instead of just accessing statistics, we want to access the statistics inside the home view model. So we'll call it vm.statistics. Click resume. Hopefully this still builds out. All right, it's still building. And finally, let's just put this home stats view into our home view. So I'm going to jump into the home view, and it's going to go above the search bar view. So right up here, let's call the home stats view, open the parentheses. And we need to bind it to the show portfolio that we set up. That's going to handle our animation. So we're going to bind to, obviously, $ show portfolio. And just like that, we have this row in our app. And if I click the button, hopefully it animates to the right. Just that cool. And I really want to point out here that all that animation is simply changing the alignment within the frame of this item. So all we're really animating is the alignment. And that is really powerful. And that's the power of SwiftUI, because this is now looking really professional and the animations have actually been pretty simple. All right, guys, that's it for this video. We now have this top section set up, but we do not yet have data to actually put into it. And that's what we're going to do in the next video. Hope you guys are staying excited because the app is really coming together. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I'm Nick, this is Swiftful Thinking, and I'll see you in the next video.